Okay, good morning everybody. Welcome to One Church. My name's Dave. I'm the minister here, or one of them. Not even the best one actually, but I'm one of them. It's really good to have you here with us. There's lots of people I recognise and some faces maybe it's your first time. You're really welcome here. It's so good to have you with us. I'm going to say right at the beginning, for people coming in late will miss this, but it's an important thing. Today is going to be a little bit different. And I think I'm so excited about it, looking forward to it. It's slightly different in that if you come here regularly, we sing songs, we have a notice slot, the kids go out, there's a talk. There'll be sort of similarities to that. But some of you will know that at the Greenbelt Festival this year, Greenbelt is a big Christian arts festival held in the summer, we ran a little event. Well, I say we. It's nothing to do with me whatsoever. But Anton, where's Anton? Put an amazing amount of work in with Bethan and with Stella and other people and Emma to put on this event that went down amazingly well called Queer Tent Revival. Awesome, one churchness in a field in Northamptonshire somewhere. And we kind of thought all of that energy and effort and us as a church not to benefit from that felt a bit daft. So two things happened to align. One is Anton and the team were up for doing it. And the second thing was we are in this season where we're looking at the book of Exodus. And it so happens that the themes that these guys looked at are found in the book of Exodus. So it felt like the perfect time to say, come and bring queer tent revival. So you've got to imagine we're in a tent. It's the first thing you've got to do as we think a little bit about the stories that we find in Exodus. And Sam is going to be speaking to us about that later on. So, just slightly different. We'll have some songs that aren't maybe our normal kind of songs that we sing here. There'll be some songs where you participate and some songs where you listen. Is that all okay? Yeah? Are you happy with that? Brilliant. If you said no, there are other churches available. Google which ones start at 11. You can make it. But you're really welcome here. We are a kind of messy, creative, I hope, church, trying to do good in the city, and this is one of the things that we do. So, the book of Exodus is about the story of a people group. It's a kind of cultural remembering of these things that happened in the desert and in other places, in captivity in Egypt. And last week I talked a little bit about the fundamental part of this story, which is about a God who wants to liberate his people and a God who still today wants to liberate us. And so we're going to be thinking about some of those themes. But one of the things we also try and do in this church quite strongly is we try and remember our commonality. And it might feel like sometimes we don't have a lot in common. But one of the things that we definitely have in common is we're all on this third rock from the sun, travelling around the sun at the same space. And in the Northern Hemisphere, at least, we experience these seasons. And we are definitely coming into autumn. The weather's been beautiful, but the trees know something is changing. I don't know if you've seen the brown leaves around. And I think we played this last year, but just as a way of kicking off our service, we're just going to watch this lovely, cheesy little moment. And it has this line. And I remember John, I can't remember the context, but I remember John mentioned this last year is it Ode to Autumn, Yeats's poem, which begins autumn. Seasons of mist and mellow fruitfulness. And there's a lovely little song about that. And I want you to just think for a minute about autumn and how you feel about this changing season. You're going to hear again and again today about these stories that are partly becoming our stories. And one of our stories is that we are people who experience change. And change is coming in autumn, whether we like it or not. And I wonder how you feel about it. So let's watch this together.
1, 2, 3, 4. Storming was
So, autumn is happening around us and is going to happen. And just as a way of bringing you kind of into the room and making people feel welcome, and I think that's really important in this church, I just want you to say hello to somebody near you. Don't be too frightened about that. There's no pressure. Just say hello. And if you're brave enough, just say a quick line or two about how you feel about autumn as it approaches. Yeah? Is that okay? You've literally got 2 minutes and 53 seconds to do that. Be friendly. Say hi. What do you feel about? Okay, let me interrupt you, if I can. We're going to sing together, and for those of you who have joined us during that part, we're going to sing some songs that were led as part of this queer tent revival that I talked about, and the first couple of songs should be more familiar to you, I think, but we're going to sing together. But we're going to say this kind of liturgy or prayer together. We're going to say this liturgy together, and it's a bit longer than our normal one, but it's around these themes of autumn as we think about the season that we're in. If you're able to and you'd like to, would you stand and let's pray this together, and then we'll sing. I'm going to say the bits in white, and if you see anything in yellow, can you read that? Is that okay? Harvest to God, as autumn light ripens the grain, ripen too the souls of your people. As brown leaves fall and sheaves are stored, help us to leave behind summer's ways and go forward in deepening compassion, thankful to heaven. You are the life and hope of the earth. By your strength you establish the mountains. Let us bless our generous God, whose goodness crowns the year. You silence the roaring of waves and sea. You silence the tumult of the peoples. Those who live at earth's furthest bounds are awed by your signs. Let us bless our generous God, whose goodness crowns the year. You make the gateways of the morning and evening shout for joy. You visit the earth and water it. You greatly enrich it. Let us bless our generous God, whose goodness crowns the year. You provide the people with grain you have prepared. You soften the earth with showers and bless its growth. Let us bless our generous God, whose goodness crowns the year. You crown the year with your goodness. Your ways overflow with richness. The desert pastures overflow. The meadows gird themselves with flocks. The valleys deck themselves with grain. They shout and sing together for joy. Let us bless our generous God, whose goodness crowns the year. The Creator crowns the year with goodness. Let all creation give God praise. With falling leaves and sunsets, we join our praise. With ripened corn and berries, we join our praise. With gold and brown and purple, we join our praise. With migrating birds and memories, we join our praise. With faithful souls and those who have gone before us, we join our praise. Amen.
You're doing it?
Morning, everyone.
So we're going to start with a song that some of you might know in some version, which is called Wade in the Water. And the idea we have with singing this song is that in the choruses you can all join in, and in the verses there are going to be some nice little melodic ooh parts that you might want to join as well. So can we get a chord? So the first one, the lower one you're going to do, so Stella's going to lead us in the lower harmony, and that goes like this. Do you guys want to give that a go? All right, you ready? So, 2, 3, 4. Very nice. And then layered on top of that, we'll have Anton singing a higher harmony, which goes like this. So then the invitation for you guys is to think, where does my voice sit most naturally between those two? And
Right in the middle.
yeah, not right in the middle, Sam. And yeah, so just follow the person whose voice you think better corresponds with your own pitch. So we're going to try this together and give it a go of trying to see which one you think you might want to join in with. So, 1, 2, 3, 4. Lovely. All right. So I'm going to be singing the verses, and when I'm doing that, you guys are going to be doing the oohs, and then we're all going to come in on the choruses, which go like this. Ready? 2, 3, 4. Wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. So do we sort of feel like we know vaguely what we're doing? You'll pick it up. You'll pick it up. All right, let's do it. All right. Okay, coming in on the chorus. 1, 2, 3, 4. Wade in the water. Wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Who's that young girl dressed in white? Wade in the water. It must be the children of the Israelite. Oh, God's gonna trouble the water. Wade in the water. Wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Who's that young girl dressed in red? Wade in the water. It must be the children of Moses and led. God's gonna trouble the water. Wade in the water. Wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Who's that young girl dressed in blue? Wade in the water. It must be the children that's coming through. God's gonna trouble the water. Wade in the water. me. God's gonna trouble the water. Wade in the water. Wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Wade in the water. Wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Very nice. And then now, as a reward for learning a song that maybe you had to do some learning on, we're going to do a song that you all pretty much definitely know. So. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears released. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed. Through many dangers, toils and snares, I have already come. 'Tis grace has brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see.
We're going to come back to some more of that in a moment. Looking at this book of Exodus, and the book of Exodus reminds us of the importance of not just sort of knowing our story, but moments that mark milestone moments. And Robert, he's playing Pokemon. Come on down here a moment, please, Robert. Come down. Whilst he's on his way, let me just give you some quick notices of things that are happening in the life of the church. One of them is that we've had Partnership Sunday recently. If this is your first time back in the room and you haven't become a partner yet, over there where we made our piece of artwork are some of these little forms that you can fill in to become a partner. Some of you have done that online already, but whilst we sing and do other things during the service, don't worry about it, but just come and fill in one of these. That would be really good. Tonight at 6:30 in here, we have our second Taizé service, and that is this movement of millions, I guess now, of people who have visited Taizé as a place, but also have used this practice of repetitive kind of chants and song together to bring some focus, and we're doing that, and somebody's leading that each month. And so the second one is tonight at 6:30, just for an hour. We will sing some Taizé songs together. There'll also be a moment to take communion together. So come and join us at 6:30. Everyone would be really welcome. But Robert has a milestone that he is celebrating on Tuesday. Robert, tell us what that milestone is.
On Tuesday, it was told me 20 years ago that I'll be sober. I would not believe it, but on Tuesday, I'll be 20 years sober.
Amazing. Amazing. Robert, we're really grateful for you sharing that. We're thinking at the moment about a God who liberates, a God who frees us, and I know that you feel God's been part of your freedom and liberation. Is that true?
Certainly is. One thing that I'm truly blessed for as well is, well, everyone who's watching it online, I'm basically moderating everything that's happening on the YouTube stream.
Amazing. That's beautiful. We've got you a teeny little present. I know you love your coffee. Well, this is the expensive one that I've brought you. This is somebody's makeup in here. I don't think that's for you. Where's my... Oh, well, wait there, sorry. I thought it was something else. And a little something in there as well. It possibly is your favourite cake. Come back. We're going to pray for Robert. Is that okay? Can we pray for you? Yeah. Both in just gratitude for what you've done in these 20 years and the fact that you're so open in sharing that. And we want to encourage you today. So let's pray for Robert. God, thank you for Robert. Thank you for his open-heartedness and his friendship and his kindness to us. And thank you also for his testimony today. This testimony of liberation and freedom in his life. And I pray this week he would have a great sense of celebration, that he would feel strong, and that he would know that you've been part of this story with him every step of the way during these 20 years. Thank you for him. In Jesus' name, amen. Let's give him one more round of applause. Well done, Robert. So lots of different things happening. A quick notice for next Sunday is our community meal. Alice, just put your hand for us, wave. If you can help next Sunday with that, or you know that you're going to help anyway, just go and wave at Alice. Go and speak to Alice. That would be really good. And just a final quick one. Avril, can I borrow you just quickly? On the 22nd of this month, which is a Sunday in the evening, we're going to do a little kind of bit of conversation together. Do you want to just quickly tell us what that's about?
Yeah, just to say, I'm going to send out an email so that you understand the context more. But essentially, I'm standing with my church secretary hat on, and I've got to fill in a survey for the Baptist Union. Joy. But it's really important because it's in the context of some changes that are proposed or may not happen for the lives of Baptist ministers who identify as LGBTQ. And I feel it's really important that the voices of our queer community here and allies are heard in that consultation. So I'm going to gather a group of people, welcome here on the 22nd in the evening for an hour or so, just to talk through what I'm being asked to fill in, but also to hear stories of what it means to be part of an inclusive community, because I think it's important that them up there hear that. And so there will be an email coming out to explain a bit more of the context, but that's essentially what I'm doing.
Thank you, everyone. Does that make sense? So that's open to anybody to come along so that we can make sure our sort of feelings about this consultation are heard and we feed back well. Brilliant. children and young people, you're going to go off to your activities. I think if you're in secondary school, you're staying with us today. Anton and the team are going to be here leading us through some stuff. But kids, why don't you go off to your activities, have fun, behave yourselves, learn something new. For those of us left behind, we're going to return to some of this thought about some of these incidents and moments that happened in the book of Exodus, and we're going to do that through some words and through some music. But why don't we just take a beat to just kind of be present in the room? I always say that the atmosphere changes sort of dramatically as the kids leave us, and it's sort of bittersweet. It's always lovely to be together as a family, but then there's also this moment where we're able to just perhaps reflect a little bit easier and pause. And so just bring yourself into the room, into this space. I have this little practice for years, and we as a church have talked about it before, but just saying these little lines over and over again. I am here, you are here, we are here together. Why don't we just sit with that line? What does it mean for you to be here and present in this room as we prepare ourselves to hear some words, to be open? What does it mean for your body to be in the same place as your mind? What does it mean when we say you are here? For some people, it's easy to think about a God who is here. For others, you might just need to pause and think, what does that mean to me? What does God look like, feel like? What's God's presence like when I say you are here? And finally, this thought of we are here together. Not just as a bunch of humans in a room, but a bunch of humans connected in deep ways because of the God who's here. I am here. You are here. We're here together. Let's just have a little bit of quiet.
So as people just sit in the quiet, something we do at youth in these quiet moments is just for each of us to decide what our word for God is. Because I know that for some people, that word is a tricky word. It can feel like a word that it's behind locked gates. So choose your word for God this morning. It could be world. It could be stranger. Your sacred word. Could be scream. And once you've decided your sacred word, then just come back into the space. Hi, everyone. I just want, on a logistic note, Emmett, Dante, and Sophie gave these, or put these underneath your chairs. So I just want to check everyone's got one, because I know we've got vacant seats. So if you see any vacant seats next to you and you just want to redistribute to the sides or to the back, I know that some people... I've got another one here. You had the mystery one. And make sure... Oh, there are two different ones. Yeah, two, but if you have an envelope, if you get an envelope from someone, you can just write it on the envelope. That might work. Yes, Sam. Okay. Have you got it? Did you guys get one? Okay. I think that's everyone. Okay, grand. Okay. And if you don't have one, you can just, it's basically just a writing prompt. So you can just type it on your phone if you've got blank ones or if you don't have one. Logistics is not my strong point, sorry guys. So I just wanted to say that a lot of the stuff that you'll hear from the stage came from Greenbelt, but also came from our brilliant, soulful, trailblazing youth group here at One Church. We meet a couple of times a week here to listen to bluegrass music and to read the old stories of the Bible queerly, which is to say, we read the stories a lot of the time for what's strange, what's overlooked. We chase the gaps and the silences between biblical lines and know what we find in our sketchbooks. So each young person has a sketchbook, so your envelopes are your sketchbooks today. Everyone comes up with something different in the youth group, and it's the privilege of my life to get to hear what people say, and my faith has been so enriched by our young people. They're on a completely different page to all of us, so I hope to share their wisdom somehow. Once we looked at the story of David and Jonathan from the Old Testament, and when I said that one of many interpretations is that these two men may have been in a romantic relationship, Emmett, one of our young people, who's a legend, said something that's, just stood out to me. He said, "But the Bible is so full of queer people, Anton." And I laughed, and I was like, if only. But then I was struck by what he said. I think he's right. I mean, aside from all we don't know about the love lives of the Bible characters, many of them stand queerly in relation to their societies, the world around them. They don't conform. They're wayward in a way. And the stories of the Bible are filled with characters who you could call strangers, characters who, like Abraham and Sarah in Genesis, woke up one morning, rubbed the night out of their eyes, and decided it was time to go, to leave, to place their faith on the road. It feels sad to me that the Bible is so associated now with white men in suits that we forget that the people who first told its stories were exactly the opposite of all of that. The Bible was composed by a pilgrim people, banished wanderers, sitting in the dark night of exile, but letting their imaginations be stirred by the stars. In threshold places, on the margins, by rivers, on mountains, at the ragged edges of cities, these wanderers without a home would look up at the stars and ask questions. How did this all happen? How did it all begin? This feels familiar any number of marginalized groups, queers included, have found themselves adrift in the world. And they've had to do this too, to look up at the stars and reimagine, reconfigure the world so that they would not lose their faith in it. So the first song we'll sing, with Stella making her debut today, and Bethan, and Emma on banjo and Sam on guitar, is called Wayfaring Strangers. And it's a song we listen to at youth most weeks to remind us of those first storytellers of the Bible and that longing for home that hums right through those stories. So the song is called Wayfaring Stranger, and the song's story is fascinating too, in that it started life on this island as an old Tudor ballad before it got carried across the water with settlers to Northern Ireland in the 1600s and then to America. So there are 1,000 versions of this song, but all have that longing for home in them that is in the Bible too. So this is just one version.
Traveling through this world alone, there is no sickness, toil, or danger in that fair land to which I go. I'm going home to see my mother. I'm going home, no more road. I'm just going over Jordan. I'm just going over home. I know dark clouds will hover over me. I know my pathway's rough and steep, yet golden fields lie out before me, where weary eyes no more will weep. I'm going home to see my father. I'm going home, no more road. I'm just going over Jordan. I'm just going over home. I'm just going over Jordan. I'm just going over home.
So we're in a series about Exodus. Also, that was really beautiful. Thank you. So Exodus is the second book of the Torah, the Hebrew Bible, the Christian Old Testament. And just a kind of overview. As it opens, the ancient Israelites have become slaves in the land of Egypt, where once they were favored guests. A new Pharaoh has come to power, who orders midwives to get rid of the Israelites' male babies. But the midwives, they didn't comply. Pharaoh's own daughter takes pity on a baby boy who is placed in a basket and sent down the Nile by his terrified mother. That boy is Moses, or in Hebrew, Moshe, which means one who draws out. So Moses grows up a prince, but vaguely aware that he belongs elsewhere. Eventually, he becomes a rebel and an outcast who leads his people out of slavery. So I've written this retelling of one moment from that story, and it's the story of Moses and the burning bush. And it takes place in that period when Moses had fled Pharaoh's palace and has become an outcast in the mountains, unsure of his place. The burning bush was our denomination's emblem at our family's Presbyterian church in rural Northern Ireland, kind of the Bible Belt part of Northern Ireland. And it was carved into the woodwork everywhere, the pulpit. But it always seemed to unsettle the conservatism of that church, that our emblem came from the story of a person, Moses, who was two things at once. He was both Hebrew and Egyptian. And he was standing before a bush, this emblem, that seemed also to be two things at once, itself and also luminous. So I've written this story about that. Just before I start, one of the great things at Youth is that, as I say, each person captures what stands out to them in their sketchbooks. So everyone's got these two cards. And on the first card, I'd love you just to capture what you notice as you listen. Let your mind drift. If you love language, as you listen, you could jot down the words that just spring out at you from the story, for whatever reason. Or you could jot down moments of the story that you like, or images. Or maybe random memories are stirred up. Don't worry too much about it. Just capture where your mind goes, the first things that come to you, and trust that. And then the second card is for afterwards, so just the first card for now. Okay. Moses and the burning bush. When that infant Moses lay floating on the river Nile in his basket among the reeds, it said he cried the cry of a much older man. It's how the daughter of the Pharaoh of Egypt had discovered him that morning. As she bathed in the river, she heard that strange cry, and its sound had startled her. What was that voice that was both young and old at the same time? The rabbis say it was the cry of an entire people converging in Moses' mouth. For a tragedy had come down hard on the Israelite people during those years. A whole generation of their boys had been lost. Pharaoh had decreed it. But then his daughter had been startled one morning. One of the lost boys would be saved. In a sense, Moses' voice would always betray his origins. As a child, he developed a stammer. The Bible says his mouth was heavy, kavod, the Hebrew says. Heavy, you could say, with too many voices. For whenever the child Moses opened his mouth, it's like there were two voices in him trying to speak at the same time. This stammering dismayed Moses' teachers. Moses had been expected to be grateful for his new life in Pharaoh's palace on the hill, but running next to him like a shadow was always the unlived life of that lost Hebrew boy he'd never become. Neither fully Egyptian or fully Hebrew. The voices of each battled on inside him. They became a fighting in his heart that could never be stilled. Until at last, the young man Moses got up one morning and walked out of the city, walked out of Egypt and out of his life. He disappears from our stories for a while. The next time we meet Moses, 40 years have passed, and Moses is standing in the middle of the mountains, in the middle of his life, lost in thoughts. He had tried to forget his old life, to throw a kind of silence across it. By now, he no longer winced when people mistook him for an Egyptian. Forgetting his mixed origins had allowed him to carve out a life for himself. He was a shepherd now, but then one night, his life changed forever. Picture the scene, the immensity of those skies, the solitude of those mountains, and the man Moses between the two, like some lost orphan glowing underneath the moon. Something has just interrupted his thoughts, caused him to question his bearings. He's walking the familiar paths. He can see the white smudges ahead, his sheep. Animal instinct would prevent them from straying, even if he had. He stops. He looks around. The world looks the same. The village behind him, the dark lines of the mountains ahead, but something is out of place. As if the world had started to spin backwards and only he had recognized it. Moses scans his surroundings again, but more closely, more deliberately. It was then, perhaps, that he allowed himself to linger on objects he previously hadn't seen, hadn't had cause to see. That bush over there was not a familiar landmark, but he was drawn to it, and for some reason, he felt compelled to walk towards it. Who knows what Moses saw when he came upon that bush? Do we ever stop and wonder? Was it as the children's Bible always had it, a bush in flames, squat and flaming out? Or maybe this is an emblem that stands for something else. Maybe that night, Moses noticed the bush glimmering with fireflies. And maybe when he saw it, he stepped into the ditch to blow on the leaves, and the fireflies rose out of it in a cloud of light. Or maybe it wasn't fireflies, but the moon that made those leaves glimmer like that. A sudden gap in the clouds, and any poor shrub could turn to radiance during the night. Only who should be there to witness such a thing? That night, at least, Moses was there to notice whatever made that bush shine. What happened next? In the story, Moses hears words, "Come no closer," a voice cries out from the middle of the bush. And that voice, we're told, belongs to God. But maybe it was an instinct inside Moses. And maybe then again, perhaps, to hear the voice of God might always be to listen to our instinct. The one that makes us want to stop in front of some ordinary thing simply to behold it as the strange, unlikely beauty it is. Maybe God is the standpoint we need to try to see the world as it really is, or as it could be. Seen from a divine perspective, nothing is too ordinary that it couldn't also be extraordinary too. When the leaves of an old bush shimmer in the moonlight, don't they also bear the rays of an invisible sun? You've probably experienced it, a moment when the world strikes you as strange and precious. Someday something ordinary falls across our path, and it feels like it's up to us to pay attention to it for a moment, or a day, or a whole life. Such moments provoke us to find our own meanings from the sense that we have been offered something new. And sometimes finding meanings is a disconcerting task. Whatever it was that Moses saw lit up in front of him, that burning bush, it queered him from the world he thought he knew. As he looked upon it, he felt his own life surging up. Thoughts and memories that had been kept at bay for 40 years now came back to him with a powerful force. His sister, Miriam, placing him in that basket on the Nile. Did he really remember that? That cry he cried? His 2 mothers? His 2 fathers? Yes, he remembered all of that. As the Bible has it, as Moses looked upon that bush and saw what he saw, his first instinct was to say in Hebrew, Hineni, I'm here. But then his next words are a question. Who am I? Whoever he was, Moses knew he could sleepwalk through his life no longer. Egypt was unfinished business inside him. He knew he had to go back in order to move forward, to let himself and his people go. And this was a fearful kind of knowledge. Moses said no. He'd stay here. In any case, he said he was a stammerer. It would be impossible to make anyone believe him. Sometimes it's painful to feel life insisting on a change in direction, to take one path when everything wants us to take another. But when Moses asks God's name, God responds with 3 words. In Hebrew, they are Eyeh Esher Eyeh, and they mean I will be, howsoever I will be. I will be. God's name is not a name, but an ungraspable movement towards becoming. And so finally Moses relents, as he must. He saddles the donkeys, he leaves the village, he goes back to Egypt. Nobody knows for sure how exactly Moses achieved freedom for his people, the Israelites. Historical facts never capture the ways people give meaning to their experiences. We create stories because some things can't be said in any other way. The Israelites told a story about their freedom that involved plagues in Egypt. Locusts, gnats, and frogs, the air dark with flies. Plague after plague, Pharaoh's heart only grew more stubborn. He refused to acknowledge that his country's ruin had anything to do with the way he ruled over it. He was adamant, was Pharaoh. He would not listen to Moses, nor would he let these slaves go. It was only when tragedy struck Pharaoh personally one night, during the sad days of the 10th and final plague, that the cries of Egypt became his own too. Out in the streets that night, Pharaoh demanded, no, begged, that his slaves leave this city immediately. And so we imagine them, the Israelite people, mothers, fathers, grandmothers, children, donkeys, crossing the thresholds of their homes and breaking out into a run, but only when it was safe enough. They left, the Bible says, in panic haste. There hadn't even been time that night for the bread to rise. As the men grabbed their staffs, the women flattened dough on their shoulders. When the sun rose, they'd bake that dough on their backs as they ran. All that night, it said God led Moses and the people in a pillar of cloud and fire. But I imagine the men running with their heads turned backwards towards Egypt. When they reached the Red Sea just before dawn, I imagine it caught none of them by surprise, when soon they spotted the first signs that Pharaoh had changed his mind about letting them go. Within hours of their flight from Egypt, Pharaoh had sent his horsemen to chase them through the night. With the raging sea on one side and the distant plumes of Pharaoh's chariots on the other, Moses and his people were trapped. There is nowhere to run to. An accusation is shouted at Moses. He's led them all out here to die. But in the end, the accusations are only spoken by one voice. What about everybody else? Those Israelites. Nobody says a word. I imagine Moses looking at the line of the chariots and looking back at the people. Some of them have sat down on the rocks. Some of them have started to tie harps on the trees on the bank, precious heirlooms. The first line of sunlight was bouncing off the water. It lit up faces that had become completely resigned to their fate. To Moses, it was this look of resignation that horrified him the most. It was this that prompted him to shout. "Stand and see," were the only words he could form in his mouth. Then he shut his eyes to pray. If ever there was a bad time for prayer, this was it. Even God, the Bible tells us, castigates Moses for taking flight from his responsibilities at this moment. Don't cry out to me, God said. This is a time for decisiveness, for action. But this moment of pause intrigues me. It comes just before all the action, as if the whole story turns on it. When the world is holding its breath for you to do what everyone needs you to do next, what would you see if you closed your eyes? In my imagination, when Moses closes his eyes to pray with doom approaching, he has a momentary dream. And in that dream, he is back in the mountains, back with that bush, the night the whole world had shone anew. Only this time in the dream, he's not alone. Moses is with his people, and he's asking them to describe the colors of the bush. In the dream, everything that Moses had seen lay in front of them too, the Israelites. The silver leaves, the fireflies, the creeks lit up by the strange light of whatever had made that bush shine. But in the dream, the people stand at a distance. Some are turning their backs. It is a bush, one says to Moses. What else are you looking for us to see? Moses stammers, gestures to them to look again. They look, but they cannot see. Now they start to protest. They get angry, and then they start to leave. It's at that point in the dream that the Moses of my imagination comes to understand something of his people. Up until then, Moses had assumed they wanted the life that he had wanted for them. Freedom, hope, a society other than the brutal one they'd been raised in. But Moses had forgotten that a whole abyss separated their story from his. Israelite or not, Moses had grown up as an Egyptian prince. He had chosen his own paths. It was different for his people. They'd had no option but to accept the world they'd been chained to. To stand before a bush or any object in the world and to see wonder in it was more than they could risk. For being moved by a thing meant dropping their guard. To see the world as anything other than they had always seen it might have left them defenseless before their own hopes for something more. Too great a danger. There could be none of that in their world. Better then to turn away. Better to keep the head down. Better to say nothing. Their time in Egypt had cast the world in shadows Moses could never begin to know. These thoughts and images hurried through Moses' head as he stood there, and he opened his eyes. Pulled back into the moment, the sea, the chariots, the people. Moses heard the sound of shouting before he realized it was his own voice. "Stand and see," he was crying. They were the same words he'd been shouting before the dream, only now he'd forgotten his stammer. He looked around. People were looking at him, open-mouthed. Some who'd been sitting before were now standing. There was a new urgency, a new edge to Moses' voice, and though they couldn't say why, something deep within them began to resound and respond. As the people listened, they looked around at the world and finally at each other. In that voice of Moses, they heard echoed back to them centuries of pain they didn't know that had ever been their own, hopes they didn't realize they could have. The people were starting to move. Men, women, donkeys, children. All of them were walking down towards the lip of the sea. When the first step touched the water, they saw the sea as they'd never seen it before. Piles of water began to be lifted up to the sky in great movements. The pillar of cloud that had been the haze of God in front of them swerved out now to stand behind them. It was time now for them to make their own way into the future, even if all they could see of it was a patch of dry ground in front of them. Well then, it was more than what Egypt had offered. Besides, they had nothing else to lose. So just spend a few moments now just capturing any images that stand out to you. Sometimes I say to the youth, like if you were to close your eyes and rerun the story like a film in your head, maybe there are moments that you'd like to take a photograph of, and maybe just describe that. And there's a second card as well. No obligation to do both, but the second card is, where are you? What part of the story is your story? Like, do you identify with a character? Or if it's difficult to answer that question, maybe you just write, when I think about the burning bush, I think. The wonderful thing about all this is that everyone would have heard a different story. One of the things that Emmett reminded me of is that we say the Bible is like a diamond because it's got so many different sides and everyone sat around it and we all see a different face of that diamond. So this is not a test, just write what comes. So we'll just give one more minute. Okay, just 30 seconds. You can keep writing. Okay, so so Bethan and Stella are going to come back on stage, and they're going to sing a song called "I Follow Rivers." And as they do, I think you can keep writing, but I think Emmett and Dante are going to. My parents built, well, my dad was a carpenter and built the Ark of the Covenant, which is needs context, but I'm so. And one of the things about the Ark of the Covenant comes later in the story, but the people build this ark with offerings that each of the people, the Israelites, give. So I like to think that my parents started this ark by building it for us, but we complete it by placing our stories in it. So I'm grateful to them for having built it for us, and I'm grateful for you guys for the stories you shared. So as Dante and Emmett come through, just drop your envelope in the box, and yeah, thank you. I follow rivers.
Oh, I beg you, can I follow? Oh, I ask you, why not always be the ocean where unraveled be my only, be the water where I'm waiting. You're my river running high. Run deep, run wide. I follow you, deep sea, baby. I follow you, I follow you, dark doom, honey. I follow you. Hear a message. I'm the runner. He a rebel. I'm the daughter waiting for you. You're my river running high. Run deep, run wild. I follow you, deep sea, baby. I follow you, I follow you, dark doom, honey. I follow you, I follow you, deep sea, baby. I follow you, I follow you, dark doom, honey. I follow you.
Just the final bit for me is the reason why Sam asked me why we chose that story, and for me, it's just that we can go so often through our lives, we can just be wandering through, and sometimes it takes an anomaly in the world, a strangeness, to kind of draw us back into life, and I think that's what the burning bush means to me. I love the fact that the bush stays entirely itself throughout the whole thing. Like if a botanist came before, during, and after, it stays the same bush, and yet there's some luminescence that Moses has perceived in the bush. And I think very often when we think about the children's Bible version and we see the bush with the flames going out, we think it's some miracle that interrupts its way into life. But it could equally be just about, I guess, recognizing that every moment is addressed to us, and every face could be a burning bush. Every moment, every experience could be a burning bush. And so we have this joke at youth, like, every face is a burning bush. So I guess, yeah, go out into the world and find your burning bushes. And we often talk about a non-compartmentalized God, that, you know, we come to church on a Sunday, but as I was just alluding to, like any moment of your life could be an act of worship, could be a sacred moment. There's a sacred quality to all of life, not just what happens here. And so on Tuesday Youth, when we have contemplative sessions here, Stella said something which I thought was really beautiful, and so I was wondering if she could share it, if you don't mind.
I find it quite hard to explain, so I wrote a bit down. But this is just like my personal philosophy that's been helping and like comforting me lately, because I feel like I do often compartmentalize God into feeling like he's only present in certain aspects of life and he's absent in others. And I feel like Christianity can sometimes preach that there's some aspects of life that are practicing your Christianity and some that aren't, and doing something like staying home from church to hang out with friends or like watch my favorite show is avoiding practicing my Christianity. But I feel like that creates guilt around things that I liked that I didn't directly associate with God, and it kind of felt like an admission that God's presence is lacking in some parts of life that he doesn't need to be lacking in. So it makes more sense to me to invite his presence into all aspects of life and into the more mundane ones as well as the overtly spiritual ones. And that's quite comforting because it means that doing what I love is always being with God, even if that's staying home from church to do something else.
Thank you.
Something we were really hoping to do is to dig through the Ark of the Covenant. I love that. This needs context moment. And hear from what you guys have to say. There's only 12 minutes left of the service, so I want to tell you what I want to say. And I feel like, to be honest, I've got the easiest job in the world at this point, because the story told so beautifully. I could listen to Anton retelling the stories of the Bible all year long, and I would like one day to do that. I think we're working on a podcast idea, trying to get him publicized, get him like a deal or something. It's going to be our income revenue. But I want to talk just very briefly, it's kind of a thought for the day thing, about qualities of seeing. One of the things that I love about the Hebrew language and these ancient stories is that there are so many details, kind of like Anton said, that if you just read them quickly, or you just read them as a story and you just want to skip through and get the events that happen, you can miss all the nuance and subtlety and the language plays. Hebrew is an incredible language for language plays. And we often think about these ancient stories of the Bible, and it can be easy from our modern context to just be a little casually judgmental. Like, because there are some pretty horrible things that happen in the book of Exodus. And then the danger is that you look at that and you just think, well, they were kind of primitive people. They didn't really know what they were talking about. We'll forgive them that and just, take the nuggets of good. There's such genius at play in the text, such insight about, dynamics of interhuman relationships and the power of empire and the way that works and the way it can be liberated and our own personal need for liberation. And there's just so many gems hidden in these stories. They are geniusly put together, and there's such a treasure trove of riches for us. Doesn't mean that there aren't complications, but it does mean that we can come to these texts with such respect and such an openness to hear. And I feel like we've already kind of modeled that this morning. But qualities of seeing. Moses begins in this story of the burning bush with a choice. And it's told in the story as if there's something that catches his eye. a bush that is burning yet is not consumed. And Moses there's kind of two stages to his glance at it. Firstly, he notices. Firstly, it just kind of catches him, and he kind of looks. And then he makes this decision, let me turn aside and see this strange sight, why the bush doesn't burn up. And that let me turn aside moment is, I think, the key, the lingering on something that has the capacity to teach him, on something that seems strange, on something that seems like I love that phrase, a queering of the way that the world should be, something that seems to stand out. And it's in that choice to spend some time noticing, to spend some time with being open to a new experience, open to a new way of seeing, that the story develops and that Moses goes on to his massive liberator role. But the verb to see in Hebrew, ra'ah, comes up so many times in this passage. But it comes up first, and we're going to do a little bit of a geeky backstory in 4 minutes. It comes up before this story as well. And basically, to put it really brief, there is the way of seeing the world and the way of seeing each other that more resembles Pharaoh's way of seeing. And there is a way of seeing the world and a way of seeing each other that more resembles liberation. And the movement of the people of Israel towards liberation isn't one that begins with snakes and frogs and the crazy miracles and plagues. It's one that begins with refusing to see the world as Pharaoh sees it, and allowing yourself to have the option of seeing the world in a new way, of seeing the person next to you in a new way. In Exodus chapter 1, the verb ra'ah, to see, comes up for the first time on Pharaoh's lips when he speaks to the midwives and says, when a baby is born, look, see it. See the birth stool is the kind of Hebrew phrase. And if you see that it's a boy, kill it. In other words, the only way that you need to see humanity is simple binaries that define whether someone is a threat or not. The only way that you need to see humanity is who is important and who's not important, or who's a risk and who's not a risk, or who's like me and who's not like me. Does that make sense? It's an incredibly binary way of seeing. There's slave, there's free, and there's no kind of option to change that. Because in Pharaoh's mind, in the mind of empire, in the mind of, I'd say, any empire, I think they all start with this kind of lie of how can we sow seeds that dehumanize someone else, that train us to think in terms of binaries, that train us to see this person as more important, or this person is carrying more of the presence and beauty of God, and this person is not important, or not carrying the presence and beauty of God, or even maybe carrying sinister forces that might threaten you. Does that make sense? And then there's this beautiful moment. Obviously, the midwives refuse, and so already in chapter 1, you've got this rebellion brewing, a different way of seeing. But there's this lovely moment where Moses' mother has her baby, has Moses, and she looks at him and she sees him and our English translations are just, some of the time they're so good and some of the time they're so annoying. It's like she saw that he was a beautiful boy, and it's not the Hebrew. The Hebrew is she saw that he was good. If you remember Genesis 1 and God creating the story of the creation of the world, and God looks at the beauty and the diversity of the world, and he says, it's good. Look, God saw that it was good. And in Exodus 1, you've got these two different ways of seeing, Pharaoh's way and the way of a mother looking at her baby. This is something that is good. This is something that is precious. And the story goes on because when Moses grows up, he sees, and he has this kind of first significant moment growing up is one of rescue. I mean, it's another complicated story because he ends up killing an Egyptian, and there's the kind of ethical dilemma of how much force is that? Anyway, but it begins. Moses went down, interesting, and he saw his brother. He saw his brothers, and he saw, as the word saw comes up twice, the oppression of the Egyptians on his brother. And the moment where Moses begins to kind of wake up to his kind of liberating, what do you call it? Not a conviction. What's when you call your life thing? Sorry? Vocation. Yeah, his liberating vocation is a moment of seeing. Maybe he's been able to choose blindness up at that point. Maybe he's been able to choose not to hear, not to see. But this moment where he actually goes and he goes to the places where the slaves are. So often our not seeing of another is easier when we keep them at a distance. Like those people over there are a threat and I don't know them. Things get much more complicated, don't they, when you actually chat to someone and you actually hear their story and you actually experience them and you actually start to see them. And in that moment where Moses sees, he can no longer not do anything about it. So the story goes on like that. There's another beautiful, let's go back again. The Pharaoh's daughter, she sees. And this is from within Pharaoh's household, in the household that would have been the most opposed to seeing humanity in a little Hebrew boy. She sees a basket, and she sees the baby, and she hears the cry. In fact, it's so interesting. The verbs that God uses of his response to the people in Exodus 3 and 4 in this story, I've seen the misery of my people, I've heard their cry, I will now send and rescue them. I've come down to rescue them. All those verbs, you just don't get this in English. All those verbs are in Exodus 1 used of Pharaoh's daughter. Right? This is amazing. Come on. Used of Pharaoh's daughter as she kind of becomes the first person to see with the lens of God, to behave like the liberator God that's going to come into the story. And in this story, Moses learns to see like that. And I love that allusion, this kind of reference that we keep coming back to, of this burning bush, this thing that complicates. It's not a simple sign. It's not God just, hey, let me power this mountain, and that will get Moses' attention. Like God could have done anything. But instead, he uses this image of complication, this image of something that shouldn't be, but is, that violates our binary ways of seeing the world. It's probably a good thing when I'm only given 10 minutes to talk. And I think our liberation is still in that. I think we can't go further in this story until we are a people who are able to see. A people who are genuinely able to see those who are different to us as brothers. A people who are able to see people who are suffering, not as just people who need to be rescued, who are incapable of doing anything. To have that picture complicated, the richness of human life, even to see the slavery that Pharaoh is in. Even to see how his inhumanity is dehumanizing him. And to allow himself to have that complexity is a core part of Moses' development onwards. There's so many things I want to say. But it's 3 minutes to 12, and I'm talking again next week. I think that what this seeing leads to is a go. And we're going to talk about that go next week, and we're going to talk about the kind of the ways that seeing causes disruption in the world next week. But I want to end just with a quote. And it's something that, there's this book that I just love to go back to and dip into again. And it's called This Here Flesh by Cole Arthur Riley. And I've quoted it from it before. It's a beautiful, beautiful book. So much spirituality and wonder in it. And can I have the screen, Corbin? Would that be okay? Is it in here? Oh, thanks. I can't read it to you until it comes up on the screen because I didn't write it down. It's too long, and I couldn't be bothered. I thought I'll read it from the screen. Cole Arthur Riley writes this, and she's kind of speaking of wonder and our capacity to wake up as humans and see the world in new ways. But she says this: wonder includes the capacity to be in awe of humanity, even your own. It allows us to jettison the dangerous belief that things worthy of wonder can only be located on nature hikes and scenic overlooks. This can distract us from the beauty flowing through us daily. To be able to marvel at the face of our neighbor with the same awe we have for the mountaintop, the sunlight refracting. I love this last little verse. Gosh, I read too much Bible. It's come back. Oh, it's gone. Oh, it's come back. This manner, just keeping you in suspense. You can read it already. You've already read it. This manner of vision, she says, is what will keep us from destroying each other. And that thing that Anton just said, how can we look at each other as burning bushes? I don't think this story is told as this one thing that happened to Moses and never happens. I think God is constantly inviting us to see. He's constantly inviting us to open our eyes to each other. And our liberation is not through another way than that. If you stay blind and you free a people from slavery, nothing changes. They're still enslaved. And they're still going to perpetuate the same kind of harm and the same kind of evil. And what we need to wake up to is a new way of seeing. I love the genius of this story sitting at this point in the narrative. And of course, as with all these things, there's so much more we could say. And if we had 100 sermons on Exodus 3 and 4, which I know everyone's asking for, there would be something different to say each time. Joss is up for that. We're going to do 100 sermons on Exodus 3 and 4, and they'll all be longer than this one, believe me. There's a little line in the next song. It felt like such a good place to end. We're going to finish. Oh, you're already there. Hello. They're desperate for me to finish. We're going to sing another song that won't be familiar to you, and it's called "Sing to the Mountain." It's a beautiful song, but it kind of talks about this kind of coming alive and moving out of what feels to me like kind of a new way of seeing. Like there's this bit in it, don't go let yourself hide. Like there's a moment to come alive, a moment to see yourself, a moment to see new possibility, and a moment to see everyone around us. So we're going to sing this together, but I think we're going to teach it a bit. And then we will finish, and it will only be 12:05, so no complaining, because we started a bit late anyway, so it's not on me, but yeah, we'll sing this.
All right, well, if you're up for it, we're going to learn another chorus together, which we'll sing a few times with a few verses in between, and it goes something like this. Go and sing to the mountain. Go and sing to the moon. Go and sing to just about everything, 'cause everything is you. Do you want to give that a go? Go and sing to the mountain. Go and sing to the moon. Go and sing to just about everything, 'cause everything is you. Fab. Let the fires burn tonight. Let the jugs of wine get drunk. Let the truth be known tonight. Don't go let yourself hide. Go and sing to the mountain. Go and sing to the moon. Go and sing to just about everything, 'cause everything is you. Listen
to the rhythm of a heartbeat like a drum. Listen to the night call, singing songs from all around. Go and sing to the mountain. Go and sing to the moon. Go and sing to just about everything, 'cause everything is you. And let your voice go, let it pierce through your soul. And let your voice go, let it pierce through your soul. Let the fires burn tonight. Let the jugs of wine get drunk. Let the truth be known tonight. Don't go let yourself hide. Go and sing to the mountain. Go and sing to the moon. Go and sing to just about everything, 'cause everything is you. One more chorus. Go and sing to just about everything, 'cause everything is you.
One more round of applause. Amazing. I can't believe that Anton can also sing. It's sickening. It's absolutely sickening. Leave some talent for the rest of us. Let's give these guys another round of applause, because that was brilliant. Thanks so much for being here. If you're a visitor, next week will be different, and the week after that will probably be different again. Try and keep you on your toes in this church. But thanks so much for the kind of open-heartedness of being here and being part of this incredible telling of a story that has profound impact on all of us. We're going to finish with a bit of familiarity by saying the words of the grace together, which might appear on the screen. Yeah, let's say these words as our kind of final prayer together. May the grace of the Lord Jesus Christ and the love of God and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with us all evermore. Amen. Amen. Just a reminder about tonight, 6:30 in here for some Taizé reflection and singing, just an hour. Come and join us if you can, that would be great. And there are some cards around that are green, and if you're new here and you want to find out about what goes on, we send out a weekly email or find out about our small groups, which are called journey groups, then grab one of those cards they're at the back and give it to me. That would be great. And tonight is at 6:30. Is that okay? Thanks so much. Do grab a cup of tea or coffee as well. You don't need to rush off. One more song. Go and get your kids, though. We can hang around, but the kids workers are tearing their hair out. Go and get the kids, but let's listen to one more song. Do it. Emmett, put the microphones on.
Oh, there we go. Oh.
Go and sing to the mountain. Go and sing to the moon. Go and sing to just about everything. 'Cause everything is you. Go and sing about everything, 'cause everything is you.
Baby, do you know what that's worth? Ooh, heaven is a place on earth. You say in heaven, love comes first. We'll make heaven a place on earth. You'll move, baby, do you know what that's worth? Ooh, heaven is a place on earth. You say in heaven, love comes first. We'll make heaven a place on earth. We'll make heaven is a place on earth. Ooh, baby, do you know what that's worth? Ooh, heaven is a place on earth. You say in heaven, love comes first. We'll make heaven a place on earth. Ooh, heaven is a place